The Tampa Bay Buccaneers got their first of the must-wins remaining on their schedule and now turn their attention to a revenge matchup with the Falcons. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
Your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this WTSP Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at eKlosky WTSP. And we are here with you the two of us are here with you every Wednesday. I am here with you every Monday through Friday. Of course, you can check out everything that Evan is doing on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. You can check out my work as the deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. And now you can join the Locked On Bucs Insiders, where you get the news, the inside scoop, and exclusive content delivered directly to your phone, plus one-on-one conversations with me via text message. And who doesn't want to do that? Join the Locked On Bucs Insiders and be in the know all the time at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs to sign up. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. The Buccaneers absolutely stunk the last time they played the Falcons. So what needs to change? Plus predictions for that game coming up a little bit later. But Evan, let's start by putting a nice, pretty little bow on a horrendously ugly game against the Carolina Panthers. But an ugly win beats a pretty loss any day of the week. It was a win.
Don't tell Florida State that.
Oh, you know, I mentioned it on Sunday's live stream. I am not a Florida State fan. In fact, of the Florida, like the big three Florida schools, I will take Miami.
You are a big fan of Ohio State. That's what I mean. That's what you really lean towards.
Florida State and Ohio State are like this. If I was going to pick a big time Florida school, I would root for the Miami Hurricanes. But man, did Florida State get absolutely hosed. Absolutely hosed. They deserve to be in there. That's what else can you say? But in this game against the Panthers, the Bucs were obviously bludgeoned with injuries, which didn't help matters. And then it looked like Noah was going to have to build another arc to save all the people that were at the game. But what was your biggest takeaway from a much needed win by the Buccaneers?
My biggest take, there are a few. One, the first half tape, I kind of ignore a little bit. Still looking through it, but it was pouring. It was unexpected rain. Both teams did not prepare for it at all. I mean, classic Florida, Tampa weather, right? You have a pop-up shower, but truly, usually you know it's coming. You can feel, we don't get rain like that in December, that humidity. It felt very September-y type of football. So I just thought that both teams were ill-prepared for what was coming their way. You saw that in the Baker Mayfield interception, the 12-6 curveball that he said, just kind of floated it up there and lost his grip. So, I don't want people to read too much into the first half. Right after the Bucs scored their touchdown, that's when the rain really started. So it really limited what they were able to do. And I think it scared Baker a little bit to kind of make some decisions if he didn't feel comfortable throwing that ball, if it was a little bit slippery, so on and so forth. Two, the defense, obviously, I'm a little bit confused as to why the Panthers didn't just run the ball down their throats. Ryan Neal was playing linebacker, and God bless him, because that is a really tough spot to be put in. He only practiced one walkthrough at linebacker, was shoved in there for most of the game. Look, he's not built like that. He can't get off of blocks. I can't say that, with Devin White being one-legged this season, that White's doing much better shedding shedding blocks as well. But overall, I thought the defense made enough splash plays to win that game. So like Ryan Neal on the in the red zone trip that forced the field goal, right? He made that tremendous tackle for a loss. Izium was there as well. Antoine Winfield Jr., right up there with the Atlanta game, just all pro, all world. I even maybe put the Panthers game ahead of the Falcons game only because Winfield Jr. was back to his 2022 role where Bowles put him everywhere, right? He was in the slot. He was blitzing. He was playing center field. He was, you had to account for him. And if you didn't, you were screwed because he was just playing. There was no one position where he just stayed there, right? He was on the near side, the far side of the field. He was shallow. He was deep. Just a world-class effort from him. I thought Logan Hall made some good plays. He generated some stuffs there in the run game. So there were some tackles for a loss. There were some pressures. There were just some things that the defense did well enough to put the Panthers behind the sticks. And if you can do that, they're not going to be able to really save themselves and pick up a second and long to then get a third and medium. Like they're not built that way. They stink. Their wide receivers can't gain any separation. I really feel for Bryce Young. He's not really set up for success at all. He's hard to evaluate. I understand the struggles of people trying to do that, but it was really an underwhelming offensive effort with a star performance from Mike Evans. It was. Yeah, and it was a good enough job by the defense. And I give the defense a lot of grace. I think that they did a pretty darn good job with the hand that they were dealt, being without their top three linebackers, without their cornerback and Jamel Dean. It's just, that's not easy. And Bowles had a couple of changeups in there I didn't hate. He pulled Ryan Neal off the field a few times, threw JTS out there. And he had, his front four and then JTS and kind of like, am I going to blitz? Am I going to drop back into coverage? This is now the second straight week where Bowles is kind of tinkering with, can you play the off-ball linebacker position? So it didn't work out well in Indy. They scored in that touchdown drive. We really didn't see it again. But he did throw out a couple of those plays. And he generated there was one that generated a pressure. Another, I think the ball got off pretty quickly. But they're trying, and that's all I can ask for. So Bull saves his job, but they can't bring that rushing defense to Atlanta. No, that's going to be a major, major problem. And we're going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons coming up in a little bit, but also want to get your thoughts on something that I threw out there regarding Baker Mayfield. And that is coming up next here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Looking for a meaningful gift this holiday season that any and all of your loved ones will actually use and enjoy? As you know, I'm a hockey dad and we travel all over for games, and my family and in-laws can't make it to every game, and some live out of town and can't make it to any games, but they still love to see the moments that happen on these trips, both on and off the ice. And now, with two kids headed off to the Navy, everyone wants to be able to keep an eye on their adventures as well. That's why a skylight frame is the perfect gift for anyone on my list. Skylight is a touchscreen photo frame that you can send photos to straight from your phone, and they appear in seconds. You can even preload photos before the box is even open. And you can invite multiple friends and family to share photos to the same frame so your loved ones can keep up with all the people they love, no matter where they are. As a special limited offer for our listeners, get $15 off your purchase of a skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. To get $15 off your purchase, just go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/lockedon.
Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every single day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Evan, I want to get your thoughts real quick on something that I threw out there on my Sunday live post-game reaction episode. I wrote about it on my Pick 6 that goes up on Bucs Nation the day after a Bucs game. And I was talking about Baker Mayfield. And of course, I said on the show, like, Baker Mayfield had his worst game as a Buccaneer, in my opinion. It was a terrible game, but then I was called a Baker apologist and all these other things because I said, to me, it looked like with a lot of these throws that he was leaving short, and it was more than just that interception of Mike that slipped out of his hand. There were a lot of plays that he left short where he had Mike open. He had some of these other receivers open and the ball was short. Looked like he couldn't plant and drive on that right foot the way he normally does, and that ankle might have been a bigger problem than normal. Did you see the same thing, or was it just kind of an overall bad performance in general?
So as I mentioned, right, like it was pouring rain, and what, like, bad ankle, pouring rain equals a really bad formula, right? It's tough to plant. Things are slippery. You already don't feel good at your base, and now you're trying to compensate in different ways. Didn't look very comfortable. Then he got hurt later in the game where it rolled up on him again. He certainly looked like a player that was hurting badly in that contest. I do think the weather was part of it. I do think some of it was just a crap game. And I just go back to the same stuff, like there was an unacceptable third down throw that he fell short of Mike Evans. I think that maybe the one that you're referencing.
Yep.
You can't miss that. There was a play where I believe Godwin was wide open in the middle of the field as well. Didn't really give him a look, and I got to go back and look again and see what the progressions were, whether he was in it. But then you go back and you talk about the Mike Evans touchdown, and that was not an easy throw, right on the money. It was a little bit of practice and preparation, and Mike doing the perfect route and Baker having the perfect throw, and both of them being aligned. And it continues to go back to the same thing. I again need to reiterate to people, it's not that Baker Mayfield is great. I don't think you're saying that he's an all-class quarterback. I'm not saying he's an all-class quarterback. I'm telling you that he is QB 15 to 18. He is an average QB. And that means every week when I watch the film and I log plays and I say, woof, Baker, wow, Baker. Usually there are 3 horrendous decisions, plays, mistakes, and there's 3 really special plays. And then somewhere in the middle is average quarterbacking. Is he someone who's going to elevate this team to a Super Bowl? No. Did you think that Baker Mayfield entering the season was going to take the Buccaneers, a team that had no money in their cap, a team that lost Tom Brady and has one of the youngest rosters in the league? Did you think entering the season this was a Super Bowl roster? No. And they have some time to make it work. But if you are watching this team and you are telling me that Baker Mayfield is the reason why they're in the position that they are in, you are lying to yourself, and you are just not, you are taking the easiest form of analysis and criticism, and you are just saying, might as well blame the quarterback, because that is not what's going on here, right? I actually said it last week on the podcast. Carolina's defense is really good. It is insane. And I don't know what their numbers are now. I'm going to assume they improved a little bit because it's not like things were getting out of hand. But reminder, the Panthers are a 1-win team. We are in week 14 now. They were 6th in total yards given up. You know how hard it is to be 1-10 and give up the sixth least amount of yards for all teams? Like, usually teams are running it down your throat, or think about it. Think about that. That is, they have a great secondary. Burns did a solid by getting ejected in the game. You know, they're an okay rushing defense, not great, but they are great in passing defense. The only thing that they don't do is they really don't force turnovers, and the only turnover they got was a lollipop, and that's, you know, they kind of get put in really bad positions because their offense stinks. So this was never going to be an offensive onslaught. It just wasn't, and thank God for Mike Evans, because he is him. So that's there are some concerns with the offense. They're not a finished product. I think we can learn right now. I'm pretty disappointed in how the rushing game was completely stymied. Part of me wonders if I don't want to call this would be quite the hubris. Part of me wonders if they kept things pretty vanilla against the Panthers with Atlanta coming up the following week, assuming you were going to win that game and knowing that Atlanta is going to be a tougher test, because Godwin really wasn't looked at often on third down. They didn't do any of those change-up runs. A lot of the things we have seen recently from the Bucs, they did not do last week. Some of it, I think, was probably rain. Some of it, I'm wondering if they wanted to keep that in their back pocket and kind of get away from it a little bit, change up kind of the tendency a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, we're going to find out this weekend in Atlanta if we go back to the end rounds and running outside the numbers and counters and peppering Godwin on third and so on and so forth. There, you know, Otton wasn't even a part of the game plan. And I think I'll get to Otton a little bit later in the show. I think that I don't think that's a coincidence either. So.
Well, and real quick, the Carolina Panthers now 7th in total yards allowed. But let's take a look at the Falcons, who aren't far behind. They're 10th in total yards allowed, and they have a much better run defense than Carolina does. But you take a look back to the loss to Atlanta earlier in the year. It was a horrid performance. They lost 16-13. Antoine was trying to single-handedly win that game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So what's the number one thing that needs to change for this rematch compared to earlier in the year if the Bucs are going to get the road upset?
They have to stop the run. They have to. I mean, I felt like in that game they were outcoached, and they had a chance to win it, but they were totally outplayed, as you mentioned. I mean, it took Himothy type efforts from Antoine Winfield Jr. to get those turnovers on the goal line. It was complete, like we'll call it like puck luck, right? I mean, just having those red zone turnovers, 3 of them in that contest. They bled yards the entire way, and it's because Atlanta did tons of counters, like just taking advantage of this uber aggressive Buccaneers defense trying to stop the run and running the opposite way. And I thought that they were caught flat-footed the entire day like that.
And Bijan only had 1 carry in that game.
He wasn't a thing, yeah. I mean,
the team gave up 156 rushing yards and somehow didn't give up a 100-yard rusher. They did to Chuba Hubbard, but not to the Falcons.
And that's the problem is, you know, if Levante David is not playing in this game and we don't know his status, there's optimism that he can maybe return. We don't know if that will be feasible. Bowles did not mention Devin White Monday, so I don't know if he's on the table either. Don't know if it even matters. But J.J. Russell did all right. I actually was pleasantly surprised with him. So it's that simple. The Falcons love to run the damn ball. Right now, the Bucs are not built to beat the run because of injuries. And if you can't stop that, you are going to get – it's going to be a slow death because they are going to run, they're going to pick up yards, they're going to keep you on the field, and you're going to be praying to hold them to 3, which is what they, or forcing a turnover. But, you're going to have to make sure that your red zone defense is good enough, hold them to 3, and then you need to hope that your offense can generate enough points against one of the best defenses in the league. That's going to be a tall order.
All right. Well, Evan is going to pull out that crystal ball, and apparently the crystal ball has something to say about Cade Otton. That is coming up next here on Locked On Bucs. PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and they are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on a 2 to 6 player stat projection and watch your winnings roll in. PrizePicks is really simple to play, and I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds with quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. That is what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. This week, I'm going with Baker Mayfield to have more than 223.5 passing yards, Mike Evans more than 67.5 receiving yards, Kyle Pitts fewer than 35.5 receiving yards, and Younghoe Koo more than 1.5 field goals made. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Score this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. The Buccaneers are currently 2.5-point road underdogs against the NFC South leading Atlanta Falcons, with an over-under of 39.5 points. And if you're super confident in the Bucs this weekend, you can get plus 700 odds on the Bucs to win by 14 or more. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders. My personal favorite are the same game parlays, and much, much more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and score this NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP Wednesday edition of Locked On Bucs podcast. James Yarcho, Evan Klosky, and it's time to dust off the old crystal ball and talk about this weekend's game against the Atlanta Falcons. Evan, let's start things off. What is your bold prediction for the Bucs and Falcons?
I've been pretty close in scores these days.
You have been.
Yeah, Kancey wasn't quite player of the game last week. I forget how many sacks they had, but they didn't get 6. But how many sacks did they have?
It
was more of a pressures game than a sacks game.
It really was. They had 4.
Okay. No, that's close. All right. Player of the game is going to be Cade Otton. I think that teams have found some success against Atlanta via the tight end. Looking at it, you're thinking about 6 receptions, 50 to 60 some odd yards. It just seems like they're going to find ways to get him involved against this team because they kind of have to, especially if Godwin's not 100%. Like, they need that option. So expect some big Otton plays. I don't know how many of them, but I would say that you're going to at least have a couple of splash plays from Otton. One of the, definitely one up the seam for 20 some odd yards. Maybe he does another one from like Indy where he makes something happen, makes a guy miss, but I like Otton.
Yeah, the Falcons are 25th in the NFL against the tight end. So a real favorable matchup there for Cade. Who is going to be your predictive player of the game? Or yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be Cade Otton. kind of fuse your bold.
I just did.
Together.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, I thought you said player of the game. So let me do my bold.
No, we started with bold.
Oh, my bad. I screwed that up. Right. Shows you how much I'm listening. So that was my player of the game. My bold prediction is that there will be no turnovers in this game. None by Atlanta. At all? None by Atlanta. None by Tampa Bay. This is going to be a clean sheet.
There was 5 in the first game.
Damn straight. That's why it's bold, baby. That's why it's bold.
All right. So you heard it here. Evan Klosky no longer thinks that Antoine Winfield is Antoine Hempfield and is going to create opportunities for the defense. Evan Klosky, certified Antoine Winfield hater.
I mean, I'm certainly not that, though. Antoine Winfield Jr. maybe has dropped like 5 picks this year. So
he has.
I mean, let's just be objective about that too.
All right. Well, a clean game, a big day for Cade Otton. The Bucs have to go to Atlanta, where rain won't be a problem because they're in that beautiful, beautiful dome. Also, side note, I've finally given in and joined the camp that all NFL stadiums should be domes. Stop with the weather. It's stupid. Just everybody gets a dome.
Come on now.
It could be a retractable roof situation if you really want it to be, but enough with the rain, enough with the snow. Everybody gets a dome. That's put a lid on Lambeau. You can leave that one up, but like put a lid on it. No more weather. No. I'm all in on dome.
Anti this take. Here's the thing. I reserve the right to change this if Levante David is going to play, if Jamel Dean, if some of these injuries turn into their favor, I do reserve the right to flip this. But on paper right now, I can't imagine the Bucs are going to be able to stop the run. Atlanta eviscerated them the first time they played in Tampa, and were bailed out by some huge turnovers. I just don't know how the Bucs go on the road, pull out this victory. So I'm going Atlanta 24-13 in this contest. Yeah, I just it's going to be a low scoring grinder type deal. The offense will get to the red zone eventually. They're going to have to hit a couple of field goals. We're going to talk about afterwards how they can't punch it in the red zone. That burned them because if they get the scores, they're right in the game. Pivotal last drive or something. Atlanta pulls it out. So I'm not saying they're going to get like blown out in this contest. I think maybe around halftime it's a 3-point game, but just the war of attrition is going to catch up with the Buccaneers, and Atlanta will continue to kind of pace themselves as the biggest winner from this NFC South as they try to distance themselves from the Buccaneers and the Saints.
Yeah, the top 3 tacklers for the Buccaneers in the first meeting, Levante David led the team with 13, Jamel Dean second on the team with 10, and then Ryan Neal also with 10. So, yeah, when you're looking at the 2 leading tacklers from the last game potentially not playing, it's not exactly a ringing endorsement. But again, we'll see how things shake out. I know Todd Bowles sounded a little optimistic that Levante would play. Also, since that matchup, we've seen more Servassier Dennis. We've seen more Yaya Diaby. Things have changed up a little bit. I totally get the reservations.
Yeah, and let me just say this. Yaya Diaby, man, that guy continues to progress.
He's fun.
He is, I'm buying stock on him because it's not only the pressures, it's the motor, and it's what he does in the run game too with containing the edge. It's just he's gotten so much better. So still really impressed, and that's going to be a wrinkle that the Bucs get to use on the Falcons this time around that they didn't really use the first time around. They did, just in smaller dose.
Yeah. So I mean, it's early, plenty of time for things to change, but so far can't see Diaby and Dennis look like 3 really, really good picks for the Bucs defense and its future. But that is going to do it for this episode. Make sure that you are coming back tomorrow. I will be joined by Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons for the crossover Thursday episode. Always great talking to Aaron. He was the more optimistic of the other NFC South hosts coming into the season, and was a little on the defending of Tampa Bay's side. I didn't think they were going to be quite as bad as many believed. Still picked them to finish last. So we're going to see how that goes. But I'll be joined by Aaron Freeman for a crossover Thursday. In the meantime, of course, you can check out everything that Evan is doing on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. You can join both of us on the Blitz Sunday morning, 8:30. Is that right? I feel like
you're right.
8:30. I always say 8:30, but I'm like, is it 8:45? No, 8:30.
And you can also find us, if you don't live in the Tampa area, on 10 Tampa Bay, the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app, which you can find in any, Roku, Fire Stick, whatever. And then you can also find us on YouTube as well on the 10 Tampa Bay YouTube page.
Yep. Got to check out the Blitz. It's the only way to get ready for the Bucs game. And of course, you can check out everything that is going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at eCloskey WTSP. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.